The knock came at 11:07 p.m., sharp and urgent against the cheap wood of my apartment door. I was half asleep on the couch, the glow of the muted television painting the room in dull blue. For a second I thought it was the neighbor again, drunk and looking for cigarettes. Then I heard the voice. "Please. I have nowhere else to go." I froze. That voice. Soft, a little husky, the same one that used to call me "sweetheart" across the dinner table when I still belonged to her daughter. I stood, heart already climbing into my throat, and opened the door. She stood under the flickering hallway light in a thin raincoat that didn't quite close over a black dress. Rain had soaked her hair, turning the dark strands into wet ribbons that clung to her neck. Makeup smudged beneath her eyes. In one hand she clutched a small overnight bag, the other hung empty at her side. She looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe just more tired. "Mrs. Hale?" My voice came out rough. She didn't correct me. She never had. Even after the breakup, even after her daughter stopped speaking to me, she had remained Mrs. Hale in my head. Now she only nodded once, like the effort of speaking had already cost her something. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without thinking. She moved past me in a quiet rush of damp air and perfume that still smelled faintly of the same jasmine she'd worn the night I first met her 3 years ago. The door clicked shut. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Rain tapped the windows. The television murmured on. I cleared my throat. "Is everything, are you okay?" She set the bag down carefully, as if it contained something fragile. "He threw me out." The words were flat. "My husband. After 26 years. Said the house was his now. Said I could take what I could carry and get out before the locks changed." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "I took a bag and a dress. That's all. I didn't know what to do with my hands." "Have you called Claire?" The name of my ex hung between us like a third person in the room. Mrs. Hale's mouth tightened. "Claire told me not to contact her until I figured out my own mess." Her words. "She's in Boston with that new boyfriend." I called twice. She didn't pick up. Silence stretched. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the distant traffic on the wet street below. She looked around my small living room, the mismatched furniture, the stack of unopened mail, the single photo of Claire still leaning against the wall because I hadn't had the heart to throw it away. Her eyes rested on it for a second too long. "I shouldn't have come here," she said quietly. "I know that. But the shelters are full and the hotels want a credit card I don't have anymore, and every friend I thought I had suddenly has a full house or a husband who doesn't want drama." She met my eyes. "You were the only person left who might still open the door." Something in my chest pulled tight. I gestured toward the couch. "Sit. You're soaked. I'll get you a towel." She sat. I disappeared into the bathroom, came back with a thick towel and an old sweatshirt of mine. She took them without comment, drying her hair in slow, careful motions. When she slipped the sweatshirt on over the dress, it hung large on her, the sleeves past her wrists. She looked younger suddenly, or maybe just unprotected. "Thank you," she murmured. I sat on the edge of the armchair across from her, elbows on my knees. The rain kept falling. Somewhere down the hall a door slammed. Time felt stretched thin, like the night itself was holding its breath. She spoke again, softer. "I used to watch you and Claire. The way you looked at her. The way you stayed late after dinner just to help me with the dishes even though she told you not to. I thought maybe you were different." A pause. I was right about that part, at least. I didn't answer. The air between us had shifted, thickened. She wasn't crying, but her eyes were bright in the low light. She leaned forward slightly, the borrowed sweatshirt sliding off one shoulder. "I don't expect anything," she said. A place to sleep on the couch for one night. That's all. Tomorrow I'll figure something out. But she didn't move to stand. Neither did I. The television flickered. Outside, thunder rolled low and distant. I could feel the heat of her gaze on my face, steady, searching. When she finally spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Unless, you don't want me to leave in the morning." The word settled into the quiet room like a match dropped into dry grass. I stared at her, at the wet hair, the smudged mascara, the way her hands trembled once before she folded them in her lap. My ex's mother. Sitting on my couch at 11 at night, asking me without quite asking. I had no idea what would happen next. But I already knew I wasn't going to send her back into the rain. That I stood up before I could talk myself out of it. "You're not sleeping on the couch," I said. "Take the bed. I'll stay out here." Mrs. Hale looked at me for a long second, then slowly shook her head. "I didn't come here to put you out of your own bed. You're not putting me out. You're wet and exhausted and it's almost midnight. Just take it." She didn't argue further. I showed her the small bedroom, pulled a clean t-shirt and a pair of drawstring shorts from the drawer, and left her alone to change. When I came back into the living room, the rain had settled into a steady, softer rhythm against the windows. I turned off the television and sat on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing. 15 minutes later the bedroom door opened. She stood in the doorway wearing my clothes. The t-shirt reached mid-thigh. Her hair was still damp, combed back with her fingers. Without the makeup and the raincoat she looked younger, softer, and somehow more dangerous. "I can't sleep," she said. I sat up. "Do you want tea? Water?" She crossed the room and sat on the edge of the couch, close enough that our knees almost touched. "I want to know why you opened the door." The question landed heavier than I expected. I could have said any number of polite things. Instead I told the truth. "Because it was you." Her eyes searched my face. "Even after everything with Claire?" "Especially after everything with Claire." She looked down at her hands. "I watched the two of you fall apart. I knew she was the one who stopped trying. I never said anything. Mothers aren't supposed to take sides." A quiet breath. "But I wanted to." The space between us had shrunk without either of us moving. I could smell the clean scent of my own soap on her skin mixed with the faint jasmine that still clung to her. My pulse was loud in my ears. She lifted her gaze again. "I keep thinking about all the nights you stayed late. The way you'd listen to me talk about nothing while Claire was upstairs on her phone. I used to wonder what it would feel like if you looked at me the way you looked at her." I didn't answer with words. I reached out and brushed a strand of damp hair away from her cheek. Her eyes closed for half a second at the contact. When they opened again, something had shifted. She leaned in first. The kiss was careful at the beginning, almost hesitant, like both of us were still waiting for the other to pull away. Then it deepened. Her hand found the side of my neck. Mine settled at her waist, feeling the soft fabric of my own t-shirt and the warmth underneath. She made a quiet sound against my mouth and the last of my hesitation broke. I pulled her closer. She came willingly, climbing into my lap without breaking the kiss. Her thighs settled on either side of my hips. The borrowed shirt rode up. My hands slid under the hem and found bare skin, smooth and warm. She shivered when my palms moved higher. We stayed like that for a long time, kissing, breathing each other in, learning the shape of something that should have felt wrong but only felt inevitable. When she finally pulled back, her lips were swollen and her eyes were dark. "I don't want the bed to myself," she whispered. I stood, lifting her with me. She wrapped her legs around my waist as I carried her the short distance to the bedroom. We fell onto the mattress together. The only light came from the street lamp outside, painting silver stripes across the sheets and her skin. I pulled the t-shirt over her head. She did the same with mine. For a moment we just looked at each other, my ex's mother, naked in my bed at nearly midnight, and me staring down at her like the world had tilted and somehow landed exactly where it was supposed to. Her hand traced the line of my jaw. "Stay with me," she said. I lowered myself over her, settling between her thighs, and answered with another kiss, slower this time, deeper, the kind that said I wasn't going anywhere. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the night finally began. She arched beneath me as my mouth left hers and traveled down the line of her throat. Her pulse fluttered against my lips. I kissed the hollow between her collarbones, then lower, taking my time. Her hands threaded into my hair, not pushing, just holding on. When I closed my mouth around one nipple, she made a soft, broken sound that went straight through me. I lingered there, tasting the salt of her skin, feeling her body rise to meet every slow pull of my tongue. The other breast received the same attention until her breathing turned shallow and her fingers tightened. I moved lower still. Across the soft plane of her stomach, past the faint silver lines that marked years of living, of giving birth, of surviving. I kissed each one. She shivered. When I settled between her thighs and looked up, her eyes were already on me, dark, open, waiting. The first slow stroke of my tongue made her hips lift off the mattress. I held them gently and did it again, and again, learning the exact pressure that made her thighs tremble. She tasted clean and warm and faintly of the rain that still clung to her. I took my time, circling, teasing, then finally sliding 2 fingers inside her while my mouth stayed focused on the sensitive peak above. Her quiet gasps turned into longer, lower sounds. One hand fisted the sheets, the other stayed buried in my hair. I didn't stop until her whole body tightened and she came with a soft, almost surprised cry, thighs shaking against my shoulders. I stayed with her through it, gentling the touch until the last tremor faded. When I climbed back up her body, she pulled me into a deep kiss, tasting herself on my mouth without hesitation. Her hand slid between us, wrapping around me, stroking once, twice, guiding me to where she was still wet and open. I pushed in slowly. The heat of her closed around me in a long, perfect glide. We both exhaled at the same time. For a moment I stayed still, forehead pressed to hers, just feeling the way she held me. Then I began to move. The rhythm stayed unhurried at first, deep, steady strokes that made the mattress shift quietly beneath us. Her legs wrapped around my waist. Every time I bottomed out she made that soft sound again, the one that made my control fray. I kissed her through it, swallowed every quiet moan, felt her nails dig lightly into my back. Gradually the pace increased. The wet sound of our bodies meeting filled the small room along with the rain still falling outside. She met every thrust, lifting her hips, pulling me deeper. Sweat slicked the place where our skin touched. I reached between us and found the sensitive spot that had already made her come once. The moment I touched it she clenched hard around me and came again, longer this time, her voice breaking against my neck. The feel of her pulsing around me dragged me over the edge. I buried myself deep and spilled inside her with a low groan, hips jerking through the last waves until there was nothing left. We stayed locked together afterward, breathing hard, hearts still racing. I kissed the corner of her mouth, then her cheek, then the damp hair at her temple. Eventually I slipped free and rolled onto my side, pulling her with me so she rested against my chest. Her fingers traced slow circles over my collarbone. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The rain had softened to a whisper against the glass. Somewhere far away a car passed through a puddle. Finally she lifted her head just enough to look at me. Her voice was quiet, almost wondering. I really did have nowhere else to go. I brushed a strand of hair from her face